not to smush him, because I don't want to.
What is it?
It's a bug.
Oh, he said pieces.
Yeah, but
He said too many pieces now.
I like for him.
Now, anyone else? Now's your chance. Go get the bathroom. Once you're in Habakkuk, there's no going back there. All right, we are in the book of Habakkuk today, so sing your minor prophets there. Hosea, Joel, Amos. We're getting toward the end of them, but this is another pretty short one, only 3 chapters. Habakkuk's kind of unique in the minor prophets. We kind of have a little bit different format with Habakkuk. Usually, the way it's mostly been is, here's these messages from God, and the prophet, whoever it is, Micah or Amos or whoever, he delivers that message from God directly to the people. Well, the book of Habakkuk is kind of a reverse. We have these questions or complaints, or however you want to say them. You have these 2 main complaints or questions that Habakkuk, kind of on behalf of him and the people, are giving to God and then waiting for a response. So an interesting kind of a different direction in terms of the prophetic books than we see. We kind of have a pretty easy structure or pretty easy outline in the book of Habakkuk to follow as well. First thing we want to do is of course, kind of get the time frame, get the setting. Habakkuk's going to be kind of in this last couple decades before the fall of Jerusalem period. We can kind of pinpoint it down to, like I said, a couple decades, not probably at least after the fall of Nineveh or sometime in that area. If you remember from Nahum was somewhere before the fall of Nineveh. He was prophesying of the coming fall of Nineveh. Well, now Habakkuk's going to be kind of looking forward to the time of the Babylonians, or he mentions the Chaldeans coming through here. So we're probably in this time period around contemporaries with Jeremiah, a little bit after Nahum, and Zephaniah here, end of the 600s BC. Oh, wrong one. A couple important dates to remember. These kind of overlap with what we talked about last week with Nahum. Of course, we're kind of toward the end of the Assyrian Empire. In the book of Nahum, we saw this important event, the fall of Thebes, down in Egypt. So it was referenced there as happened already in the past. So we know that one for sure. That one was 663 BC. And the Assyrian king that conquered Thebes, he was probably one of its better rulers, ruled for a long time up until 627 BC. And it's after his death that Assyria had kind of a very quick falling off. And you see in 612 Nineveh falls. So from the time of that Assyrian king Ashurbanipal to the end of Nineveh or the fall of Nineveh and basically the end of Assyria, just 2 decades, 15 years or so. Well, it's during this time in the kingdom of Judah. This is after the northern kingdom has fallen. That was way back in the 700s. Josiah, remember, he becomes a king when he was just a boy, I think 8 years old. And it was about his 12th year that coincides with the death of the Assyrian king and the Assyrians kind of losing their grip on power. Josiah starts to do these great reforms, not just religious, but expanding Judah's rule as well. But he ends up dying in this battle of Haran, and that's an interesting one because it's right around, I think in your lesson book it mentions the Battle of Carchemish. Basically, after Nineveh falls to Babylon, there's still some lingering Assyrian forces, and what ends up happening is their allies, the Egyptians, come up and try to join forces with the Assyrians and fight against the Babylonians. Well, before that happens, you have this Battle of Haran. Josiah is trying to intercept Egypt and keep them from joining with the remaining Assyrian forces. Well, it's in this battle that Josiah dies. And for a short period, the Egyptians are basically in control in control of Judah. They appoint Jehoiakim as king, and you can read about this in the Kings and the Chronicles books. So they appoint Jehoiakim as king, or they appoint Jehoaz as king. But then here comes the Babylonians, and they pretty much start to kind of control the area, and they end up appointing Jehoiakim as king. And it's during this time you have the big Battle of Carchemish, which is the final last gasp of Assyria. Assyria and Egyptian forces soundly defeated by Babylon. Egypt pretty much has to flee back to Egypt, and Babylon is now the kind of the main player. And if you know your history, we have a succession of deportations. So that was kind of the first one. Around 605 was the first deportation where Babylon takes captives from Judah. You remember who was what are some famous people that were part of that first deportation? Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they seem to be part of that first group. Babylon came in and taking some of the best back to Babylon. They come back later in 597, and of course during all this time, this is after Josiah, and you had this kind of quick succession of all these J kings: Jehoahaz, Jehoiakim, Jehoiachin. Eventually Zedekiah is going to be the last one, and they're all kind of I think they're all brothers. They're just a succession of sons of Josiah that keep getting appointed as king by either the people or by whoever the ruling power is. So the point of all that, of course, 597 is that second deportation. About 11 years later, 586 was the fall of Jerusalem, and Nebuchadnezzar comes in and destroys the temple, and that's the big one right there. This second deportation, that was guys like Ezekiel. I think he went in that second deportation. But Habakkuk's kind of coming in. It's tough to tell if he was during Josiah's kind of longer reign or if he's in this kind of last period about 609 down to 586, the fall of Jerusalem, about, 25 years or so of several different kings and just kind of turmoil, and none of those kings are very good at the end of Judah after Josiah. So kind of a time of turmoil. So it's kind of right in there that we kind of think Habakkuk ends up ruling. There's a little reminder of Assyria and then how quickly they started to lose territory. 660, 650. By 612, Nineveh falls, and then about 609 or so is when you get those last couple battles that pretty much cement Babylon as the ruling power there. Getting into the text here a little bit, like I said, it's a pretty easy. Habakkuk's kind of a pretty easy outline. You have this first intro verse, and it basically says the oracle that Habakkuk the prophet saw, and that's all we know about Habakkuk. There's not really much to go off with him. We don't even have a from the tribe of or from the town of like we do with some of the others. Even that name is kind of it's not even a Hebrew name. It's a different language, so we don't even know if Habakkuk was necessarily even of Jewish descent, or was an Israelite. We don't know his lineage, so lots of questions with that. But again, we have these kind of two laments, two questions that Habakkuk's going to ask, and then we see God's response to all of these, and it's real interesting because these are questions that we would still kind of ask today. They're very poignant and very valuable questions that when we're having these times of doubt and distress. I mean, these are questions that we might ask. And then he's going to wrap up his book with it looks like something straight out of the Psalms. This prayer in chapter 3, something you could see in one of the book of Psalms, just a prayer of lots of things happening in there, praise and just acceptance of what God has said. Any questions about the dates or kind of the setting for Habakkuk? I went through that quick because we kind of did more of that last time. Let's just dive right into the text. I'll start. We'll do this first. We'll do just the first 4 verses here. Someone read for me. Read chapter 1 and just 1 through 4. This is Habakkuk's first lodging his first complaint, his first question. Someone read verse 1 through 4 for me. Go for it.
The oracle that Habakkuk the prophet saw. Oh, you all. I'm going to read it off yours.
That's fine. That's fine. That works.
O Lord, how long shall I cry for help, and you will not hear, or cry to you violence, and you will not save? How do you make me see iniquity, and how do you idly look at wrong? Destruction and violence are before me, strife and contention arise. So the law is paralyzed, and justice never goes forth. For the wicked surround the righteous, so justice goes forth perverse.
I tried to highlight, of course usually if I highlight yellow, that's just stuff I want to kind of cover and look at, some key sections. But I tried to, there's these 2 words that get talked about a lot in Habakkuk. So violence will be red and justice will be green, and hopefully you'll see those kind of pop up throughout the book. But really the gist of Habakkuk's first question is, how long shall I cry for help? How long? It seems like it's taking forever. I cry out, I call to you, I pray to you, and nothing's happening. And again, how many times have we had those same thoughts and those same prayers about a trial that's going on in our life, about the country and the direction it's going, or so many times throughout our life we can have this exact same cry and same prayer. He continues, I cry to you, there's violence. He's even saying, well, this is some of the stuff he's seeing around him. So assuming he's living in Judah at the time, he's looking around and seeing all of the violence that is done. He's seeing, verse 3, he's seeing all this iniquity and all this wrong, and it's like God's just letting it happen and sitting idly by. He sees destruction, he sees violence, there's that word again, strife, contention. He's seeing that the law is just frozen. There's no one is following the law. I would assume he's talking more specifically about the law of Moses there. He says that justice, there's no justice in the land. The wicked surround the righteous. Justice gets perverted. So he's seeing this turmoil in his country and all around him, and who wouldn't have this cry? You see all that, you think, well, what's God waiting on? One question I want to ask is, is this appropriate to ask God? It seems like, we kind of talk about, well, our goal is to not have any doubts about God's sovereignty. This sounds like doubt, right? Is this okay? Is Habakkuk wrong for asking and wondering about these things? Are we wrong when we have these kinds of doubts and thoughts in our mind? What do you think?
It looks like he's just being honest with God on how he feels. Sometimes maybe we're not as honest with God.
Which is crazy because, what's the point of trying to sugarcoat our thoughts and feelings with God? Like, okay. You're like, no, I trust in you, but I'm, just wondering what's going on. Like, no, just be real with him. He knows what you mean. You don't have to sugarcoat it. You can't hide when you're having those doubts. So sometimes they happen. They come to us. Oh, yes, ma'am.
It seems too like his big, as opposed to complaining all about it, which is what
Mhm.
it kind of sounds like, it's almost like he sees it, but he wants to understand it. He wants God to explain it to him. What's going on here, Lord?
That's the sense I get with Habakkuk. I mean, they're called. I mean, you might see in your Bible it's Habakkuk's complaint or something, and that kind of has a negative term to it. I don't necessarily see this as this at the same level of the Israelites complaining about not having food and water in the wilderness. I think that was a different level of more unrighteous complaining. I think, like you said, I mean, he's wondering. He sees this. It doesn't make sense with the God that he understands God to be. I mean, he keeps mentioning violence and justice. Well, he knows God's character. He knows that God does not like violence, and he wants there to be justice. But when he doesn't see those things happening as they should, he's wondering what's up.
What I see is he's complaining about the people and their actions, and he's more or less wondering, why, Lord, why don't you bring down the judgment that you have promised? You said you would. You've let it go too long now. They need to be brought in line.
And I get that sense with Habakkuk. He knows his book. He knows his law. He knows when the law is being paralyzed. He knows, the chapters in Deuteronomy that talk about, well, if you don't do this, this is, these bad things are going to happen. And he knows what the law says, and, he's not seeing that necessarily being fulfilled in, at least up to this point. So he's, again, wondering how long, wondering, is God not hearing him, or is God not hearing their cries? Why all these questions at the beginning, and will you not save, and why do you look idly at wrong? He's wondering why this is all happening. Well, any thoughts on these first four before I move on? We'll get to.
Just real quick, when I think of the idea of questioning, I think to Luke chapter 1, and you see where both Zechariah and Mary both question
Mm-hmm.
the message that they were given, but one was kind of rebuked for
Yeah.
it, the other one wasn't. And a lot of that has to do with, I think, even in this case, is you can question how God's going to accomplish something and still have faith in Him.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what Mary did.
Mm-hmm.
She had faith that He was going to do it. She just didn't understand how can you do that.
And that faith, remember that, because probably the most famous verse we'll see in Habakkuk that ends up getting quoted in the New Testament 3 times is, "The just shall live by faith." So if you had a summary verse of the whole book, it's going to be that one here in a little bit. So keep that in the front of your mind. And yes, I would agree. There's some doubts and questions that are not rebuked, and some that are rebuked in the Bible. We don't see this one rebuked. So this seems to be a pretty good question.
And I think we forget that it's in God's time.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah, we'll see that here. He'll talk about that. Habakkuk is limited. He sees years or decades passing, and that's a blip on the radar to God. Actually, we'll see that God says he is taking care of the problem. He just might not realize it yet. Let's get to that. So look at chapter 1 now. We're in verse 5. We have the Lord's answer here up until about verse 11. Verse 5, we'll read that. "Look among the nations and see, wonder and be astounded, for I am doing a work in your days that you would not believe if told. For behold, I am raising up the Chaldeans, that bitter and hasty nation, who march through the breadth of the earth to seize dwellings not their own. They are dreaded and fearsome. Their justice and dignity go forth from themselves. Their horses are swifter than leopards, more fierce than the evening wolves. Their horsemen press proudly on. Their horsemen come from afar. They fly like an eagle, swift to devour. They all come for violence, all their faces forward. They gather captives like sand. At kings they scoff, and at rulers they laugh. They laugh at every fortress, for they pile up earth and take it. Then they sweep by like the wind and go on, guilty men whose own might is their God." So God's answer here is, hey, look, watch what I'm doing. Be astounded. I'm doing something in your days. I'm doing something right now that you would not believe if told. So he's doing something. Habakkuk doesn't realize it yet. The people haven't made that connection. He's doing it right then, but they don't know it. They wouldn't even believe it if they were told. And of course, what is he doing?
He's bringing a nation upon them.
He's raising up the Chaldeans, bringing a nation upon them. Of course, the Chaldeans, think the Babylonians, kind of pretty much synonymous there. Bring up this nation. Then he's going to go through and really describe what these Chaldeans are like. Bitter and hasty. They seize dwellings not their own. Dreaded and fearsome. Talks about their justice and dignity go forth from themselves. Their horses are swifter. Talks about their military might. They come for violence. They gather captives like sand. They scoff at these kings. Laugh at every fortress. I mean, it's just a swarm coming upon them. Kind of interesting, verse 11. They sweep by like the wind, go on, guilty men whose own might is their God. So he's bringing up these Chaldeans that are, basically worshipers of themselves. They serve their own might and their own selves. I think of Nebuchadnezzar in the book of Daniel. You remember, what did he say about himself when he looked out across his great city, Babylon, and all the things he had accomplished? He praised himself, right? He talked about everything he had done and, got punished for that. He was sent off became like a madman, it says in the book of Daniel. So they were worshipers of themselves. What's interesting is, who just got done kind of controlling the known world at the time? What nation just fell pretty recently? The Assyrians, yeah. They were pretty bad, right? Well, now we got these Babylonians coming in and just as bad, seems just as bad, if not worse. Notice the two colored words there. We talk about their justice. Where does their justice come from? Whatever they want, yeah, themselves. So whatever they determine, that's not justice. That's conquering, dictatorship, whatever those words, whatever words you want to use. That's not real justice based on righteous law or trust in God or anything. And of course they all come for violence. Their faces forward. They're looking forward to the violence. I highlighted sand. One thing I read, just the mention of sand. Think about that word in the Bible, way back in Genesis and the promises to Abraham. What was Israel promised to be like? The sand on the seashore, right? I mean, as numerous as their nation, their people, that great nation would be, as numerous as the sand in the seashore. And look how these Babylonians are described. They're coming to gather captives like sand. So think about, we might not notice it, but the Israelites might see that and think about their beginning, and they're looking forward to their end pretty quickly. They started off with these great promises that were fulfilled. They became a nation as great as the sand of the seashore, an innumerable number. That's the idea. Like stars of heaven, sand of the seashore. And now here comes the Babylonians, and they're gathering all of that sand up. All that sand, all those people are going to be captives. Just a story of rise and fall right there, if there ever was one. And I mean, these Babylonians, they scoff at any kings and rulers that they come across, laugh at every fortress. They pile up earth. That's pretty much how Jerusalem was taken. It was besieged. They pile up these earthworks, and that's how you conquer you conquer a city, you besiege it, and that's how you conquer it. And their might is their own God. So think back to the question here. So how long will I cry for help and you not hear? What are some things that Habakkuk was complaining about? You know, God's not listening. What is he seeing all around? He's seeing... Yeah, well, he's seeing all the violence. I think he's talking about just in Judah, in Jerusalem. There was that time period of Josiah who had some great reforms. You know, he found the book of the law. He reenacted the Passover. I mean, he was doing his best. Well, after his death, his sons did not follow after him. The next 4 kings that ruled all the way to the end were more and more wicked. We see a lot about Zedekiah in the book of Jeremiah. I mean, he's constantly butting heads against, you know, God's prophet, and I mean, all these guys were just wicked. They were the complete opposite of Josiah, and all these things. You know, the situation of violence and injustice in Jerusalem was deteriorating quickly. So that's what Habakkuk's seeing. And, you know, he's complaining about the lack of justice and all the violence. And then here comes the Babylonians, and what are they bringing? More violence and more lack of justice. That's going to lead to Habakkuk's next question here. He's kind of seeing that, and that didn't answer his question. You know, he's wondering how long. He's like, oh, great, you know. It's like God's like, okay, here's Babylonians, you know, more violence, more injustice. And like, wait, I want you to fix that and not bring more of it on us here. But to Habakkuk's credit, again, you know, these aren't impertinent questions that, you know, irreverent questions. He kind of takes a moment, and, you know, I kind of think of Abraham, you know, when God says he's going to destroy Sodom. And Abraham's like, well, you know, what if you find 50 people? And, you know, God's like, all right, I won't destroy him for 50 people. And, well, how about 40? And each time he's like, you know, just let me do one more. He's very polite about questioning God and lowering that number over and over again. I get that kind of sense here with Habakkuk. He says, well, verse 12, are you not from everlasting, O Lord, my God, my Holy One? We shall not die, O Lord. You have ordained them as a judgment, and you, O rock, have established them for reproof. You who are pure of purer eyes than to see evil and cannot look at wrong. And then here's kind of his question. Why do you idly look at traitors and remain silent when the wicked swallows up the man more righteous than he? So what's he asking? Exactly. Why? How? That don't make sense. You know, why are you letting these Babylonians come up? And I mean, it makes sense. Okay, they destroyed Assyria. Great. You know, they were wicked. But then they're coming and they're going to destroy. You're going to attack Judah and Jerusalem. And yeah, we're not doing great right now, but we're not as bad as these Babylonians. They're worshiping themselves. They have no love for God. Why are they allowed to gain might and control and take over and destroy you know, God's people and God's holy city? Why are they the ones? They are more wicked than they're way more wicked than even the bad situation in Jerusalem right now. Verse 14, you make mankind like the fish of the sea, like crawling things that have no ruler. He brings all of them up with the hook. He drags them out with his net. He gathers them in his dragnet, so he rejoices and is glad. Therefore he sacrifices to his net and makes offerings to his dragnet, for by them he lives in luxury, and his food is rich. Is he then to keep on emptying his net and mercilessly killing nations forever? And then kind of not the best chapter break here, but he finishes, I will take my stand at my watchpost and station myself on the tower and look out to see what he will say to me and what I will answer concerning my complaint. So, you know, why would you use Babylon to, you know, bring more injustice and more violence and and all these things, why are you using them when to punish? Pretty much makes sense. Why is God, who is of pure eyes, and he doesn't idly look at traitors, he doesn't remain silent with the wicked, why would he use that? Why would he use them? So we're in chapter 2 now, chapter 2 starting in verse 2. So the Lord answers this second question, and he says, write the vision, make it plain on tablets, so he may run who reads it. Writing it down and putting it on tablets. What's the idea there?
Think of it as being sure.
Yeah, that's the idea I get. And not too many times we put things on tablets or write it in stone. We use the phrase written in stone, right? It is for sure. What God is about to say is done. It's the book of Revelation uses sealed a lot. It's done. It's sealed. It's ready to go here. Verse 3, for still the vision awaits its appointed time. It hastens to the end. It will not lie. If it seems slow, wait for it. It will surely come. It will not delay. We kind of get an answer to, how long, O Lord, in this instance. The vision's coming. It awaits its time. It hasn't come yet. It hastens. If it seems slow, wait for it. I think that's the key right there. It may seem slow, but it hastens. So it's not about God, neglecting bringing justice or neglecting answering the question. It's about our perspective, right? It's not, it was slow, it seems slow. And that's the key. We have to look through God vision versus ourselves. Wait for it. It will surely come. It will not delay. It hastens. It will not delay God's answer to these problems that are not unique to Habakkuk's day. These problems happen in Jesus' day and in our own time. These waiting for justice and waiting for the end of violence. It seems slow to us, being limited in our lifetime, but it will surely come. It will not delay. Behold, so here's God talking. I think talking kind of about the Babylonians here. Behold, his soul is puffed up. It is not upright within him, but the righteous shall live by his faith. Moreover, wine is a traitor, an arrogant man who is never at rest. His greed is as wide as Sheol. Like death, he has never enough. He gathers for himself all nations and collects as his own all people. Verse 4 is what we mentioned. What's going to be happening a lot with the coming of the violence that Babylon is going to be bringing? What's going to happen to many of the people? Death, yeah. I mean, death is coming to many of them. But just a little snippet there. The righteous shall live by his faith. Again, I mentioned, I think it's three times that verse is mentioned in the New Testament. Romans 1, Hebrews 10, Galatians 3 or something. But so it's kind of interesting. You'll have to go through and read those in their context, because they kind of take this verse and, kind of look at it from three different angles, which is kind of cool. I guess what do you get from that little statement? The righteous shall live by his faith. Does that mean he'll avoid the death and destruction that's coming?
Oh, but God knows who he is.
Yeah. So we might die, but we will live, right? And I think that's the idea. We will live because of our because of our faith. Do we still have faith if we're asking these questions? Does that mean we don't have that same faith? I think Habakkuk seems to have pretty good faith. Did you have a?
A little different thought about it, not wrong or anything, but it's just a little different. If you think about it now, God's asking them to go through this. He's got a plan, and they're gonna be part of it.
Yeah.
Today, sometimes we feel like we're all surrounded by wickedness, but we're supposed to live by faith so that others, God's got a plan for us
Mm-hmm.
in this. We just have to trust Him and not grow weary. They seem like they're in the same kind of thing.
Yeah, they're going to be, depending on when this date was, they're in for it for the next couple years. And really, the 70 years beyond that, after the fall of Jerusalem, they were in captivity for, till 536 when they were allowed to return to Jerusalem. So we're looking for about a 70-year, according to Jeremiah, 70-year period of captivity and just completely uprooting the entire, Jewish religious structure there. I mean, the complete wipeout of Jerusalem and the temple. But the righteous will continue. The righteous will continue to live, and it's through their faith that they will do that. Yes, sir.
Think about his second question, okay, or his second complaint, because his second complaint was, why the evil Babylonian, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's his, and so God's basically saying to him, well, judgment's gonna come on anybody that,
Mm-hmm.
that practices evil, anybody that's puffed up, that's
Yeah.
the thing, because, think about it, it says, behold, his soul is puffed up.
Yeah.
It is not upright within him. But the righteous,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to live by trust and faith in God. It's not just not just Judah's going to be punished. It's not just the Babylonians going to be punished. That's why are they doing that? It's what all are going to be punished. The just shall live by his faith.
And that's why I wanted to highlight all these words, because way at the beginning is kind of describing the situation in Judah before the fall. Well, now we're describing Babylon in the same way. So you get the idea, like, okay, these are parallels. You have these two wicked nations. The first one's going to fall by the second. Well, what do you think is going to happen to the second? It's going to fall by another, which we know that's exactly what happened. After the Babylonians, they lasted a few more decades. Here come the Persians. They take over and defeat the Babylonians. And the Persians were a great nation for a time. And then here comes the Greeks. And the Greeks were, a nation for a time. And then here come the Romans, and, and so on and so forth. We know the Romans eventually, Rome eventually falls. Every great nation that falls into these types of activities, violence and injustice and whatnot, they will fall just like all the previous ones before. So, verse 5 that I highlighted wine. Anyone have anything different there in your Bible? Verse 5. I saw some commentaries that I think there's some versions that talk that instead of wine, it's actually like money and wealth right there, which kind of makes sense with the next statement. His greed is as wide as Sheol. So get the idea that, wealth and greed. I mean, that's what these nations were doing, right? They were conquering others to try to amass great wealth and power. But I mean, these things are traitorous, and that greed can swallow you up just like Sheol can. Verse 6, shall not all these take up their taunt against him with scoffing and riddles for him, and say, well, we're going to get these next 5 woes, I guess, about this nation. Woe to him who heaps up what is not his own, for how long, and loads himself with pledges. Will not your debtors suddenly arise, and those awake who will make you tremble? Then you will be spoiled for them. Because you have plundered many nations, all the remnant of the people shall plunder you for the blood of man and violence to the earth, to cities and all who dwell. So woe to the nation that heaps up what is not his own. What's going to happen to him? You will be plundered, right? You know, the punishment or the crime is punished accordingly. You gather up, you take over, you plunder others. Well, soon you will be plundered as well. Go ahead. Verse 9, the next woe. Woe to him who gets evil gain for his house, to set his nest on high, to be safe from the reach of harm. You have devised shame for your house by cutting off many peoples. You have forfeited your life. For the stone will cry out from the wall, and the beam from the woodwork respond. Woe to him who gets evil gain there in verse 9. You devise shame in verse 10 for your house, cutting off many peoples. You have forfeited your life. You cut off peoples, you kill them, you will be killed as well. Verse 12, woe to him who builds a town with blood and founds a city on iniquity. Same idea. Again, all these woes, just reminding it, yes, I mean, I'm using these Chaldeans to come in and punish Judah, but woe to this nation and any others that don't come with justice and are violent in these same ways. Another verse that we might recognize, verse 14, for the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord. We see that, not exactly that quoted, but that concept pretty often as the waters cover the sea. The last 2 woes. Woe to him who makes his neighbor drink. You pour out your wrath and make them drunk in order to gaze at their nakedness. You will have your fill of shame instead of glory. So you make your neighbor drink. You just shame them. Well, you will be shamed as well. Jumping ahead to verse 19. Woe to him who says to a wooden thing, awake, to a silent stone, arise. Fancy way of talking about idolatry. Can this idol teach? Behold, it is overlaid with gold and silver, and there is no breath in it at all. So woe to those that worship and raise up wooden images, gold and stone images. And a great way to kind of end this whole section is another verse that we recognize and we sing about. The Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth keep silence before him. I think that's a great way of kind of bookending this whole section, because we're reminded that it is God that is in control of all these. He's the one that Habakkuk is appealing to. He's the one that's answering these questions and doubts, and it's because of this. The Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth keep silence before him. Are we talking about that, simple building in Jerusalem, whether, assuming it was still standing at this point? No, we're talking about the temple of heaven, his throne, the throne room of heaven right there. The Lord is there. Let the earth keep silence before him.
Contrast to verse 19.
Yeah.
The idol.
Oh yeah. I like that they're right next to each other. Use that last woe, and then the Lord's in it. The Lord is in this holy temple, not some statue to Marmok or whoever, in some temple in Babylon. The Lord is in his holy temple, and reminding us again that the righteous shall live. All these talk of violence and death and things, just a reminder that the righteous shall live by faith. If you get a chance, we won't get to talk about this prayer, but it's kind of interesting after these questions and their answers. You kind of you get to see Habakkuk's response. You know, I've heard the report of the Lord and your work. O Lord, do I fear? And he talks about salvation and how the Lord is the bringer of this salvation. And it even ends like a psalm at the very end of verse 19, to the choir master with stringed instruments. So again, you can read that like you would one of the psalms. So, all right, thank you very much. Next week we're getting to Zephaniah. Where's Chris? Yep, that's right, Zephaniah. So we got kind of a string of short ones here. Zephaniah, then Haggai the following week, and then we'll get a longer one with Zechariah. But read through Zephaniah, another short one for next time. All right, thank you.
where did he start? Did he start with John? And he talks about where Matthew's account, over in Matthew chapter 3 or Luke chapter 3, about the greatness of John that came before Jesus, that proclaimed the Son of God is coming. There's one greater than I. Is that what he told him? Well, he may have told him that, but he definitely didn't stop there, because the one that was greater than I has came. He has fulfilled these scriptures. This sheep that was silent was Jesus Christ. You know, it even talks in Isaiah about how they would not esteem him. And then you turn over into Matthew chapter 2. There when Jesus is in his own town, and what is it that they do? They make fun of him. May have got that verse wrong, but they call him, who is this? Is this not the carpenter's son? Is this not the brother of, and names off Jesus' brothers, and then talks about his sisters? Are they not among us? And they talk Jesus down. And Jesus said, you know, a prophet is not esteemed even in his own country. You see the fulfillment of Isaiah there? Or does he talk about how Jesus came before John, and John called him the Son of God? This is the Son of God, the Lamb of God that takes away the sin of the world. What does it take tonight to convince you that you are everlastingly lost if you do not obey the gospel? That's what Philip preached to the eunuch. We have a hope of salvation, and that salvation is through Jesus Christ, the Son of God, the one and only Son of God, the only one that can take your sin away, the only one that can reconcile you to God. Why would you wait? Well, you turn over to Acts chapter 8 and you finish reading what we were just talking about, you'll see that they were in this desert and they come to a body of water, and he convinced the eunuch enough that the eunuch knew that he needed to be baptized to be saved. He had to get rid of that sin to be reconciled to God. And he said, here's water. What hinders me from being baptized? And they get out of that chariot, they go down into that water, the eunuch is baptized, and he goes away happy, and then Philip is picked up and carried away again. It is an understanding that every person has to come to. You have a choice. You can either obey God and serve him, or you can not obey him and follow Satan to hell. That's the choices. That's the choices. But in every account where you see a person obeying the gospel in the scripture, and even in real life today, when they obey the gospel, there's nothing but joy. But we see it time and time again, the heartbreak, when somebody just waits and waits too long. You know, this song we're about to sing, they took it down from me, but all things are ready. They are ready tonight. Are you? Are you ready to put off that old man of sin and to follow Jesus and to do what God wants you to do? That's the invitation that's open. It's not open just now. It's open every day, 24/7. I say that all the time, but it is. But now is a very convenient time, and there's no better time to do it than right now. If there's anybody here that is subject to the invitation, we ask you to come forward and let us know while we stand and sing.
All things are ready. Come.
Good evening. We've got just a few announcements before we're dismissed. Like we've got a good crowd tonight, good number out. We're glad for the presence of each and every one. If you would look around and see those that might be missing, if you would check on those and see if there's anything that might need to be done there. So just keep a check on everyone. Those that I know of on the sick list pretty much stays the same as Sunday. James Henry Trim made mention of him. He gets his report tomorrow, I believe, so I'll continue to remember, pray for him. Brother Ricky Clifton, you would continue to remember him. I think he was supposed to go back to the doctor this week. Also, Chuck Hagler, I think he's pretty much staying the same, continuing with his dialysis. Sandra McLemore prepares for her procedure that'll be done next Thursday, May the 2nd, so if you would remember that. Also, the Pembertons, we had them out, just had them sick, but Don did say that they had around a strep that they've been battling, so we're glad to see them back and feeling a lot better, so glad to see them. And also, Jill Black, made mention of her having respiratory problems as well. Isaac Kennedy is not feeling well. He's not with us tonight. Also, if you would remember our shut-ins, of course, and our college students, those that are away from us. If you would keep them in your prayers. Meetings in the area, the only one I know of in our area is Bartlett Church of Christ. Gary Kerr is holding that meeting there. It'll be the 26th through the 28th. That starts this Friday, goes through Sunday at 7 p.m. Nightly there. And the only other thing I have is we have a birthday to mention. It's Jack Barker's first birthday, I think, is today. So if you would remember him. So glad to make that announcement. But that's all I have in the way of announcements. If you would please be standing at this time, we'll be dismissed in a word of prayer.